Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. And good afternoon to all of you. So welcome to Wacana Bulan Pendidik. Our themes today is higher education for progressive minds of society and the world. So we have here yang berbahagia Tan Sri Dato Profesor Emeritus Dzulkifli bin Abdul Razak, Rektor International Islamic University Malaysia. Okay, how are you, Tan Sri?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, so then I will introduce a brief bio about Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato. Okay, so Tan Sri is currently a Rector of the International Islamic University Malaysia. He was the Vice Chancellor of University Science Malaysia USM from 2000 to 2011. He is the immediate past president of the International Association of Universities, IAU, a UNESCO-affiliated organization based in Paris. He was the convener of the Regional Center for Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development based in USM, one of 7 pioneering centers worldwide beginning 2005. So Tan Sri was awarded the prestigious 2017 Gilbert's Medal by Universitas 21st in recognition of his long-term commitment to a sustainable approach to international higher education. He is a fellow of the Academy of Science Malaysia, the World Academy of Art and Science, and World Academy of Islamic Management. On 28 May 2022, he was elected as a Senior Fellow of Academy of Science Malaysia. Okay, so there is a lot of experience and contributions, Tan Sri, to the world of education. So, I think without further ado, okay, I would like to invite yang berbahagia Tan Sri Profesor Emeritus Dzulkifli bin Abdul Razak to give his speech and share the discussion ideas and so on. Okay, so please, Tan Sri.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Wan Marzuki. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu syafil anbiya mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I would like first of all to thank UPM for inviting me to give my opinion on the topic that is very exciting, higher education for progressive mind, society and the world. It is something that I think all of us are trying to understand. What is it that we are going into moving forward, especially at the pandemic? Yeah. So I will try and use the time that's given to me, maybe about an hour or a little bit more, and then we can have a discussion. I think that discussion is more important than what I have to say. So let us begin with this particular topic, and I would like to begin by trying to understand what is the word progressive, because the progressive has been used in many varieties, sometimes in a political way, sometimes in different ways. But in my context, when we talk about progressive, we start with the word progress. It is something very positive in many connotation. Yeah, a movement towards a goal, an advancement, something like a development, including sustainable development of the individual, all for the benefit of people around us, going forward and making action. I think making action is probably the most important part. At the end of the day, if we progress without action, then I think the progress to me is incomplete. Yeah? The Malay word I think is maju. Maju ke hadapan is where progress is, and I guess that's the context that we want to kemajuan. This probably is the context that we want to use. So I'm going to talk about what is it that we need to do to bring this positive impact and the positive action, given what we know, given what we are doing in our own university, and certainly UPM has done a lot on this dimension. Yeah? So the word progressive is an adjective to this, something that shows progress, something with fresh ideas and thinking. I would like to take this on. It is something about a new thing. It's not about the old thing being made the way to work today, but what are the new things that we can bring? What are the new thinking? This is where the forecasting of what's going to happen in the future becomes important, so that at the end of the day, it will have a support to this. Yeah? So some of these opposites that we see today, the word conservative, the word traditional, the word ancient, the word past, is seen to be quote unquote as a negative impact as far as progressive is concerned. So sometimes it's easier to understand the negative rather than the positive to define this particular words. That is the realm or the kind of a definition that I will use in this particular talk today. So progressive, in other words, is forward-looking. It is innovative. It is optimistic. It is pragmatic. It is fair. It is respectful, and it is also patriotic. These are words that we use all the time. In other words, our thinking in most of the times are quite progressive in the way. Yeah? It is not progressive. You are short-sighted. In other words, you are not thinking long-term. You're just thinking maybe even now 5 years is considered short. We want to look at what do we think in terms of one generation, yeah, 30 years. Those kind of sighting is something that is important. We are not afraid of new ideas. It's something again that I think our universities are not very clear about. Sometimes we don't want to say something so that we do not offend some people or do not offend the ministry, although the ideas is good, although you don't agree with some ideas because it is not good. Yeah, close-mindedness, and again we are not interactive enough to understand what is happening around us. We are always within our own domain. If you're an engineer, you understand anything about engineer, but how does engineering relates to other discipline is something that most of us are not interested. And sometimes it is always very self-centric. I do this because of my KPI. Kalau tak ada KPI aku tak buat. Sometimes I ask my staff, can you do this? And jawapannya, ini bukan KPI saya, Tan Sri. Those kind of things. So you get a very different kind of attitude as far as that is concerned. But why is progressive so important to me? Because progressive at the end of the day will define another phase of life, another phase of activities, yeah? And this is what they normally call the progressive phase. The progressive phase are important because it embodied a few very important values. Social justice is one. I think after the pandemic, we begin to understand not everybody has got the same benefit. If you look at what's happening around us, for example, vaccine. Simple analogy, Although everybody is entitled to the vaccines, but if you look around the world, some part of the countries has more opportunity to get the vaccine, some parts of the world has more opportunity to get the vaccine, whereas some other people in different places do not. So although we're talking about life is the same, tak kira lah life di Asia ke, di America ke, di Europe, they are the same life, but it is valued differently. Yeah, the rich will have better opportunity as compared to the people who are not as rich or not as lucky as these people. So the question of social justice, I think it is important. Why I want to bring this? Because to me, education is about social justice. Yeah. Why we have education? Because education is a leveler of society. Kesudahannya we get everybody to be on the same path because they have all the same education. When education is not about social justice, when education creates more disparity between the rich and the poor, and this is why I'm critical over private education, I'm very critical about international education, because it creates that disparity, and therefore it spoils the whole idea of social justice. Equity between people, equity between communities, particularly the urban and the rural communities. These are issues that I think we need to focus on when we come to education. Yeah, and now education is also taken a different dimension. When you talk about sustainability, the work that I do, education for sustainable development, we are now also trying to bring in the environment. How do our education relates to the environment? How do our education protects the environment? So the whole dimension of climate change, global warming that we are talking today is something that becomes important as part and parcel of education that is regarded as progressive. If the education do not take into consideration the environment, not only the human environment, but also the animal environment, the natural environment, these are also belonging to the idea of environmental harmony. How do you live in harmony with the environment is another dimension that is described as progressive. Yeah, and all of this is based on what? Based on empathy. Empathy means that we are able to actually go down and contribute. For example, if you talk about the environment, there are works that we do to make sure that the environment are protected. Yeah, the river, the forest, whatever that actually contributes to this harmony, we are there to actually participate and make sure that it is part and parcel of the activity that we do as part of education. So education for sustainable development, which we'll talk a little bit, will define that kind of a progressiveness as far as moving forward is concerned. And it is for all. Yeah, it is for all. It is not only for certain segment or certain population or certain countries or certain community. It is for all, and it's the whole world of being the humanity. We're talking about the humanity. How can humanity being protected? Yeah, if you have this, then at the end of the day, education bagi saya becomes a movement, a positive, progressive movement. So it is not about 8 to 5 kind of job. It is a 24-hour job because it's a movement, satu pergerakan that has no time. It is not bound in time. Especially when you talk about internationalization, when we were sleeping, some other people are awake. When they are awake, we are sleeping. So it is almost a 24/7 kind of activity which wants to restore the rights of the people, the opportunity that they have, and the question of injustice. Back to the question of social justice. Yeah. So in here it says to return the control of the government to the people. The people is a government in many respects. Yeah. But in many countries, when there is a government, Malaysia included, the people are not well represented. It becomes more of a political ideology taken by a political group, and sometimes the people are not even being part and parcel of that movement. And this is where, bagi saya lah, university becomes the most important apparatus to talk for the people. Kerja kita become a mouthpiece for the people to articulate some of these issues that sometimes it is so difficult for them to understand. Yeah, very complicated issues that we need to speak for them. We need to speak with them so that they can get whatever they need to get and create the social justice as we see it. So my concept of higher education is not about jobs, it's not about career, it's not about just doing things for ourselves. Our job in university, from my point of view, is actually to look after the community that we are in. That's our biggest role. Yeah? With the knowledge that we have got, with the facilities that we have, how do you protect the community around us? Not just the university, tetapi the community, the masyarakat di sekeliling kita. Macam mana kita mempertahankan hak mereka? How do you make sure that they have the rights to live like the way we live? Just because they are not in university doesn't mean they need to have a different kind of lifestyle, because when you talk about justice, everybody should be equitable. So to understand the progressive mind, bagi saya must understand the progressive university. I think if the university is not progressive, then it is difficult for me to imagine how we can train a progressive mind. If the university is very conservative, if the university is very authoritarian, if the university is not working with the people, how do you expect our student to be progressive? How do you expect our student to be, working for the community? All those values must come from the kind of higher education that we promote. And therefore, how do you define what is a progressive higher education? Yeah? So the next slide tells you a little bit about it. All right. There is now, bagi saya, at least in Malaysia, there's almost a tug of war, between people who want to see university as very government control with the ACTA and C and D and that. I mean, the recent example, maybe we got instruction from the higher authorities mengatakan, you have to set your cuti design, you have to do, I mean, even sampai cuti pun they have to tell us what to do. Then I don't think we are as progressive as we want to be. Yeah. In other words, there is no level of trust. Tidak ada kepercayaan bagi universiti untuk membuat sesuatu yang dipikirkan baik untuk universiti. They must tell us what to do because they think we are not trustworthy. Those are the kind of reading that we've got. So now the higher education needs to decide, how do you move from these conservative elements to the progressive elements, so that we are seen to be progressive, we are seen to be forward-looking, we are seen to be playing a role that is defending social justice, equity, and all the things that I've described to you. Yeah, and for that, maybe we need to look at what are the important elements in higher education, in our university. Is the university practicing this? If the university is not practicing it, then I think how do you make sure that the university is practicing it so that the student, the staff, and the community are also benefiting from that? Yeah. So some of the things that I think of, what are the issues? The issues of principles. Maknanya, what are the main principles that the university holds dear to? Pegangan-pegangan apa? Yang penting. The question of governance, pentadbir urus. The question of culture, the question of authority, the question of wealth distribution in terms of finances. These are, I think, some of the areas that we want to look at and determine whether our university is progressive or our university is conservative or not progressive sometimes. And if it is not, then how do you begin to change? So in the conservative university, you may want to decide whether UPM is conservative ataupun tidak by looking at some of these values. For example, in the question of principles, we are very official, we are very formal, we are very orthodox. Maknanya, if university is 50 years old, nothing has changed. It will remain the way it is because we don't want to change, because we think it is not important for us to change. In terms of governance, are we assertive? Are we defensive? Are we loyal to the university? In terms of the culture, what sort of culture is it? A very legalistic culture? Are we practicing discrimination, racism? And are we based on emotion, on sentimentalism, or stuff like that? Authority, what about the strength, the order, or the power distance between the vice chancellor and the people around? Can the vice chancellor and the people come in together and discuss things, or do you have this bureaucratic sort of distance that we often see, right? In terms of power, what sort of power structure do you give in terms of helping the poor, or are we now not bothered about the poor? Yeah. So from that, what do you change? The change is basically question. From formal, we're talking about that we are allowed to question some of the decision of the university. Yeah, we are allowed to modify because we have a role. Because we are part of the university, we have a role to actually question, modify, make sort of suggestion, so that we are part and parcel of deciding where the university wants to go. Not like the unorthodox university, this official and we are not able to change it. Yeah. In terms of governance, is there a question of a reconciliation? In other words, where we can sit together and understand what are the issues and how we make sure that everybody benefit, not just the management or not just the government or not just some groups, but everybody benefited. How do you cooperate with one another? What sort of diplomacy do we use? We don't have to argue, we don't have to fight, we don't have to demonstrate, but there is a diplomacy that we agree to disagree. Some of the things that we probably cannot get in terms with. Yeah? During this year, I think this one is not a problem in Malaysia in terms of gender equity. Sometimes there's more female than male, but are we flexible enough to allow some of these people taking the role? Some, for example, in terms of leadership, although there are many females students in our university, also many female staff, but when you look at the top management, how many of them are female? So how flexible are we, and how sympathetic are we with the cause of creating this gender equity? Yeah? In terms of culture, are we tolerant? We talk about internationalization. Do you adopt people's culture and live with them? And do you actually want to find more, or do we still live macam some university? Kalau ada international student pun, Malaysian student dengan Malaysian students, international is another group. They don't mix together, right? The question of authority, egalitarian, maknanya everybody is fair, especially in university. Although I'm a rector or a vice chancellor, I'm one among equal. I am not special in that particular context. If you look at the bureaucracy, right? Pengarah ataupun whatever it is, they occupy a space of their own. In our case, in terms of university, we do not have that space. We are equally the same with everybody else. Doesn't matter jurusan A ke, jurusan B ke, we are cordiality. Kerja kita persaudaraan ni is more ingrained than compared to the bureaucracy. And that's where the word fairness come in. Yeah, we are able to be fair to other people because we are among them and we share authorities. Yes, some of these are sharing because when I delegate something, then somebody will share this authority and do what that needs to be done. All right. So these are some of the factors that we can play around with to determine whether we are a progressive organization or we're having later on progressive minds. And this is where it starts off. If the university itself is not progressive, then I find it is difficult to create a progressive mind because it is not just the nature of the university to allow that to happen. So where are we now? Yeah, where are we now and where are we heading? I think this is a question. I don't know, when I sit down and sometimes think where our university is going, I'm not so sure. I don't know whether you are clear. Yeah, sometimes I feel we are lost especially after the pandemic. Yeah, the direction is not very clear as compared to some other universities around the world. Yeah, sometimes I feel disoriented because we don't know what are the important things that we want to do vis-a-vis the the pandemic. Yeah, we begin to understand that the pandemic now is exposing so many things in the world today. We talk about, for example, when you talk about the world-class university, the pandemic tells us this number game is no longer important. Yeah, the KPIs is no longer important because during the pandemic, nobody talks about the KPI, and yet everybody survived. Yeah, because we have moved on into some other values. So where are we now? I think is the issue that we need to settle before we can even talk about being progressive and moving into the progressive era, as it were. So are we settled on this? Is UPM settled on this? Is IIUM settled on this? Where and what is it that we want to do so that we can begin to develop this progressive culture that we talked about, right? So there are many versions of this. I just want to create some of the readings that I've got. One say that, you know, when you talk about the future of the university, they got the university is dying. And there is a very good book by Peter Fleming, produced by a professor of organizational studies, University of Technology in Sydney. And he describes what the university is from his point of view. I use this book because it mirrors what's happening in Malaysia, but it's happening somewhere else. So we don't have to be we don't have to be very defensive about it. Kadang-kadang cakap pasal Malaysia ni orang very defensive about it. But his story is very clear. Dia kata the dark underbelly of a modern university that reveals the crack in the ivory tower. Maknanya you're already beginning to nak runtuh lah. There's a crack within the university itself. Dia kata there's a strong link between new liberalization of higher education in the last 20 years. I don't know whether you read my article yesterday dalam utusan. When I talk about Cikgu Fadli ni, kita menggunakan satu acuan yang kita panggil sebagai new liberal acuan kita, new liberalization of education. That is what we have been using, and dia kata the psychological hell now endured by its staff and students because of the model is such, we are going into a situation which is actually not progressive. Bila katakan psychological hell ni tak progresif lah dia. While academia was once thought to be the best job in the world, that's why we, or at least I, joined the academia, because I thought we can do autonomy, there's some intrinsic job that satisfies me, and there's some vocational thing that I can do on my own. That's why I chose to be an academic. It's not because of the gaji, not because of the status, not because of the name, but I can satisfy my own curiosity to do things. But we need this. We need this autonomy thing, we need this satisfaction, and we need this zeal, keseronokan untuk bekerja. University pada ketika itu, when I joined them in the 1980s, still has some of this. And you would be, dia kata now, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a lecturer who believes in this. You are the younger generation. How many of you joined the university because of this? Because of the autonomy, because of the satisfaction, and because of the zeal. This is what determines the university now. If you join the university because of something else, then I think you have missed the point of what the university is all about. And that's why they kata the university is dying, right? And he dwells into this new metric obsess. This is a ranking lah. Kita nak tunggu nombor berapa. Kalau nak masuk universiti ni mesti nombor top 10 or top 20 or top 100. Overly hierarchical world that bring out the hidden underbelly of the new liberal university. It is because of the new liberalism that we all now subscribe to this new metrics that is created by them to number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, because that's what they want us to believe in. So universiti nombor 1 tu mesti bagus lah dalam banyak konteksnya. We will examine whether that is true or not. He examined commercialization. Commercialization ni, this is what we are doing today. We are actually selling education. Education is no longer free ataupun no longer affordable, mungkin tak free, no longer affordable, it becomes a source of income. That you now sell education. You talk about internationalization, when the concept internationalization, dulu maknanya there's an exchange of student, exchange of staff, exchange of knowledge. Now it's no longer about that. Internationalization means I bring international student and I charge money. So that I can create revenue. Apa yang dibawa is not important to me. What I need is the revenue that comes from them. And that's what internationalization has turned out to be. Dia kata the rise of managerialism, so you organize or I run, or we are expected to run a university like running a company, right? With a corporate structure, corporate routines, managerialism, and students now are known as consumers and evaluators. Students pay, and then they will tell us what to do because they are consumers. Consumers is always right. Yeah. Therefore, they will tell you what to do, and it becomes competitive in terms of the individual. And this is where the ranking comes in. Yeah. Pada ketika itu, when I read this book, this whole mental illness and self-harm ni is still not clear. But now under the post-pandemic, we find that mental illness and self-harm is another product of the current university. So we see when there's a lockdown, most of our students do not know how to behave. Yeah, then issue of mental health, issue of suicide, issue of depression, anxiety becomes more enhanced because is part and parcel of what we actually don't do for our students. So if you read this paragraph balik, dari segi penilaiannya, again, we find that the university is not a progressive university, right? And these are the product of the unprogressive university. Yeah. There is also dia punya podcast, dia punya podcast, kalau you listen to their podcast, yeah, they talk about this. There's a societal contradiction. Maknanya kita dengan masyarakat tak boleh berganding bahu. There's a contradiction between the two parts. When I earlier mentioned that we speak for the people of the community, now we are not able to do that because of that contradiction. The institutional business, this is what I mentioned just now. We are now using our university to create money, yeah, by selling education. When we sell education, then the question of social justice does not happen anymore. Because only people who can afford will buy education. People who cannot afford will not buy education. And therefore, the disparity between the who can afford and people who cannot afford will always be there. So he coined the word edu factory. So kita think like just a factory model, guna factory logic, tetapi we're using education as a substance, right? So dia kata you mimic the large institutional corporation, the corporate culture, marketing, individualism, and so on. So if you listen to this podcast ni, you find again that the university, as it stands today, from his analysis, is not a progressive university. It creates more problem than it gives solution. As I mentioned, when we talk about progress and progressiveness, we are talking about good outcomes rather than bad outcomes. It dwells on glossy brochures of smiling students, lingering misconcept of an intellectual life in the Ivory Tower. Yeah? Kita ingatkan Ivory Tower ni is a place where we can earn money, we can live a very stylish lifestyle, but that is not what university is all about. University has to go into a very tough work because it's an intellectual work. Yeah? Ada orang buat perbandingan kalau kita bekerja di universiti, menulis misalnya, itu dia punya energy taken is almost like membajak tanah 3 jam di bawah matahari. That's a kind of equivalent. But people think when you go to university as an Ivory Tower, you can have a good life. So therefore, this misconception is something again that we want to put it right. Yeah. So they kata the time has almost run out to reverse this decline, and this book shows how academics, you and me, needs to act now if we are to begin to fix this broken system. So to him, the university is a broken system. Higher education is a broken system if this is what he judged the university on. And I think many of these things also is reflected in our university. Our universities are very obsessed in this. Yeah? Sehingga kan ada usaha-usaha untuk menentukan bahawa kita top rank 100 and stuff like that and pay money on it. Our university is very much a commercialized university. Very lately, we see this question of mental illness is coming on board. Our university is very managerial in that particular sense, right? And all those things that we talked about. So that is one assessment of whether this university is progressive ataupun higher education is progressive in that sense. Yeah? So if you go back to history And now, because we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, I just want to relate to what is this industrial revolution is all about in terms of progressiveness. Yeah. Mungkin orang mengatakan bahawa, oh, you have got the first industrial revolution, you have managed to create a steam engine, and therefore it's progressive. It creates a lot of opportunity for work. It makes travel easier. Yeah, it will create more development, right? But nobody talks about the smoke that comes out of this. Asap yang berkepul-kepul ni. Ya. Ini satu kereta api. Kalau 10 kereta api macam mana laga asap? Ya. Nobody talks about this. And then we go on to the second industrial revolution. Instead of kereta api, we are talking about factories. Mass-produced factories. More smokes that comes out. Yeah? And not only more smokes, there's all sorts of other chemicals that goes into the smoke that comes from the factory. You have acidic gas, you have chromium, you have formaldehyde, you have furans, you have lead, you have dioxin, you have arsenic. All these are poisonous things yang dikatakan self-harm tadi tu. And all of this now are accumulating in our environment, and it is still accumulating walaupun ini dah 300 tahun umurnya. You produced it in the 1700s, yeah, when the first train was invented. And now it's been 300 years, they still having this because one, dia dah ada dalam udara kita, dia tidak akan berpisah. And this is where the global warming, climate change comes into picture. And now kita rasakan, oh, this is not a good way to do. So we begin to move into a clean industry, yeah? And that's where the third industrial revolution comes in. And that is a clean industry. Tidak ada asap, tapi tengoklah cara kerjanya. Ya. Dan saya hampir menggambarkan ini sebagai sebuah universiti. Ini yang baju putih ni semua lecturer ni. Kita lah ni. Mazuki saya ni tengah-tengah ni student kita ni. Student ni kita macam-macam lah kita buat. Sudahnya dia keluar dalam factory ni. Dia dalam apa ni conveyor belt. It's a clean industry, fine. The environment is clean, but the human dimension suffers under this. Very, macam dia kata tadi lah, very managerial work, very routine work, datang buat kerja yang itu saja macam di factory, kesudahannya dengan KPI yang tertentu. Yeah. At the end of the day, we are talking about the other kind of revolution. We need to move into what we call not the industrial revolution, but the social revolution that makes the university a progressive university. Remember when I talk about social justice and apa tu, empathy and so on and so forth, right? And this you begin to see, yeah, Progressive Capitalism and the Age of Discontent is a book by George Stilich, one of the Nobel laureate, mengatakan this question of people and power and profit. How do these things work together? Yeah, not just the profit, not just the power. What happens to the people at the end of the day? Is about returning the power to the people, as I mentioned earlier. Bila kita ada progressive movement ini, yang akan menjalankannya, yang akan mendapat untung daripadanya adalah rakyat jelata. And that's the kind of revolution we talk. And this revolution is through education. We are not talking about fighting with arms or killing one another, terrorism. That's not the kind of revolution that we talk about. How do knowledge revolutionize? And what do knowledge revolutionize? Knowledge will revolutionize the mind. Right? And this is what education ought to be if you want to change all this. If you don't want to change all this, that's fine. But if you want to change, mengatakan the progressive mind tadi, then this revolution must work on your mind, must work on your brain to bring a new sort of era, the progressive era, as it were, right? And one of that thing yang happens ni is what we call now under the Sustainable Development Goal. Yeah, the Sustainable Development Goal that was introduced in 2015 by United Nations in New York. Dia mengatakan we need to do the social revolution in the context of sustainable development, right? And that is what education is now gearing on. Education for sustainable development. And what is the sustainable development that we talked about? These are some of the criteria. Dalam education yang sustainable itu dan progressive, dia mesti ada inclusion dan sustainability. Mana keterangkuman semua dan kesejahteraan. The word saya pakai for sustainability is kesejahteraan, bukan kelestarian. Kelestarian is just a translation. Tak ada makna. Katanya lah makcik di kampung, makcik hari ni macam mana makcik? Makcik rasa lestari ke? Dia tak faham ni. Tanya makcik lah, balik tanya bapak je lah. Bapak hari ni lestari pak? Apa kau ni gila ke? Dia tak faham dia. Atau bapak hari ni mampan ke pak? Tak faham dia. Tapi katanya bapak hari ni sejahtera pak? Dia tahu. Pasal sejahtera itu memang ada makna. Lestari dengan mampan ni a translation of the word that has no meaning. What does it mean? It means no one is left behind. And it's back to the question of social justice tadi. You're respecting the environmental limits. Back to the environmental harmony that I talked to you about. Ini dia the actual criteria when we talk about what you call the progressiveness. It talks about equity. This social justice semula, between and within people, between countries, between generation. It talks about transformation, not the number of goals, bukan nombor, tetapi dia punya impact, dia punya scale. Right? You may be number one, but if your impact is small, then you are not transformational. You may be number 100, but your impact is good, then you are transformational in that particular sense. It has to be universal. Dia mengaitkan semua orang, so dia connecting the dots. Walaupun kita di sini, tapi kita connected with everybody. Right? Tetapi kita yang menentukannya, bukan orang lain yang menentukannya. This is a fundamental thing. Kita yang menentukan. Bila kita cakap tentang ranking ni, siapa yang menentukan? Orang lain yang menentukan. The criteria is all theirs, not our criteria. The criteria often is made in Europe. European criteria, and kita nak gunakan to judge ourselves. Then I think it is not fitting because it does not fit into the context. Konteksnya tak sama. Dia mungkin memang tentu dia ada benar, pasal konteks tu dia punya bukan kita punya. It has to be comprehensive, maknanya dia menyeluruh, dan juga macam saya katakan dia interacting or they interacted with one another. So kalau kita ada 17 lah, we've got the 17 goals, starting from no poverty, a right to partnership. How does this connect with one another? Kita ada pendidikan. Macam mana pendidikan kita to connect dari segi no poverty? Macam mana pendidikan kita to connect dengan well-being? How does this pendidikan connect into bringing peace? How does this connect into the question of climate change? So dia jadi satu ilmu yang menyeluruh, yang itu dikatakan the transformational ambition. Dia bukan saja address satu, dia address yang ini saja, yang ini dia tak peduli. It will not work because semua ni are interrelated. We begin to understand this now in the context of trying. This is another part of being progressive in trying to bring a solution to the whole thing. When it is not connected, this is what happened. Ini balik-balik pada tadi. Ini tahu apa ni? The first industrial revolution sampai the third industrial revolution. When it is not connected, ini yang berlaku. You can take any of this, dia akan melonjak dengan sendirinya. The so-called exponential growth, when it is not sustainable, right? And the kemuncak comes in the 1950s. Selepas 1950, during the third industrial revolution thereabout, kita dapat that everything now is going to be exponential. So kalau pendidikan kita tidak address ini, kalau pendidikan kita juga mengatakan bahawa all we want to do now is to increase the economic growth, then you are going to suffer in many things. Economic growth will sometimes affect water use, will certainly affect the species, right? And all these things, temperature, population, humanity, will be affected by that. And again, this is a question of the unprogressiveness or the unsustainable way of educating that leads into a very unsustainable sort of environment, and not only one country but throughout the whole world. It is generally called the Great Acceleration because semuanya memacu going up. And in fact, governments now cakap begitu juga, ya. Dia cakap about what they call the economic growth. Economic growth is fine, but where does it leads to is a question. Where does it lead to? There's this book here. Dia panggil The Collapse of the Western Civilization. Dia mengatakan bahawa kalau inilah trend, ya, if this is a trend that we're going to go beyond the year 2000, dia kata the world will collapse or the civilization will collapse in the year 2093. Lebih kurang 90 tahun lagi, tak sampai 100 tahun pun. The world will collapse because the world cannot sustain anymore in the context of, growth as it were. And therefore higher education sekarang ini mesti mula memperhatikan ini. Yang kita ajar kepada pelajar-pelajar kita, are we promoting this exponential growth or are we bringing it down to a level where we talk about the social justice and so on and so forth. That I think is the kind of mindset that we do. Yeah. Tapi for sure now, kita dapati kita semua terumbang-ambing, we don't know where we're going. Right? We are trying to find out our balance. Yeah. Walaupun dulu kita ingatkan kita stabil, and all because of this new virus that comes in, right? And will tell us there is a lot more ahead of us. And how do you deal with this crisis, again, depend on how progressive your education system is and the kind of knowledge that you give to our own people, right? So to summarize what I've been saying is basically the structure yang kita ada dulu. The structure yang kata dulu very hierarchical. If we talk about this hierarchical structure, a pyramid almost, yang kita manusia kita rasakan kita di atas ini, yang lain semua ni tak penting. Yeah. Until lately, woman pun tak penting. Now that woman is a force to reckon with, we need to somehow or other, give them some room. Kalau tidak, woman pun is a property to some people, right? And this hierarchy is very rigid. It's all about me. It's about the ego ni. Saya je. Apa yang saya dapat, okay. And I will compete with everybody. And this structure is almost a dead structure because nak mengubahnya, to change it is not going to be easy because of the rigidity of that culture. But yet you need to shift into this progressive culture that I talked to you about, where everything is the same. Yeah, where everything is the same. Sorry. Tak kira mana saja, kita dapati semuanya berkait dengan satu one another. It is network, it is flexible, it is always on the move, you can change it very quickly. It's not about me alone, it's about all of us, UPM, UIA, and all the universities around the world. We collaborate with one another, we don't compete anymore, because we will benefit from one another. And I think the Blue Ocean strategy, and it is a living structure. You can see, I'm trying to put life into it. It moves. Because, why it moves? Because it is ecological based. Yeah, all around us are living structures, and therefore it becomes a very important structure for us to change from that to that. Now, how do you change from this structure here into that structure? I think this is a question when we talk about how to be progressive. We need to face this out. Maknanya kita cuba tukar perlahan-perlahan benda yang very hierarchical, very rigid, yang tidak memberi pulangan kepada seluruh tapi hanya kepada sebahagian saja. Then I think we need to change that, right? And this is where I think right now we are talking about the sustainable roadmap. Our university, UIA, has been given the task to create a development roadmap for the whole country together with UNDP to change the structure from what is not sustainable to something that is sustainable. And what does that mean? That means we have to talk about at least three things. We have to talk about social equity, we have to talk about the environment by semula, and we have to talk about prosperity. So education now must focus on these three things. Kalau you are from a faculty of environment and you just talk about this, you don't include this, then you are not progressive in that sense. If you are from an economic faculty, you just talk about this, you don't pay attention into this, again, you are not progressive in that sense. So dalam bahasa kita panggil sekarang ni wawasan kemakmuran bersama yang perlu dicapai pada tahun 2030. Adakah pendidikan kita menjurus kepada ini? Malah soalan ni dah lambat, berapa tinggal 8 tahun, 7 tahun lagi. Soalan ini patut timbul awal-awal lagi. Pada tahun 50-an, mungkin 60-an, masa kita merdeka, macam mana kita mendapat kemakmuran bersama. The sort of equity that we talked about, right? So this is the education that we want to talk about that creates this progressive mind and led to progressive society and also progressive world. One example kita boleh lihat dari rancangan Malaysia ke-12, dia ada 3 tema. Temanya resetting the economy, and talking about well-being and inclusiveness, talk about that, and talking about sustainability. Ini tema 3 ni, dan dia ada 3 lagi atau 4 policy enabler, to develop future talents. So maknanya future talent ini mesti geared into that progressive thinking that we talked about. It's same with the aid of technology, right? Same juga dari segi connectivity, macam mana kita connect with one another dari segi physical ataupun dari segi virtual, dan sudah tentunya memberi perkhidmatan, that one we talked about. And these are all the goals yang kita ada. Mungkin dalam RM12 dia cakapkan these are, kalau cakap security ni you can see almost all ada di sini. Kalau ini mungkin 2 saja, kalau ini mungkin 3 saja. Tapi you can see education is here, yang boleh kita connect with one another. That is, I think, the structure that we need to look into before we can even talk about being progressive ataupun tidak. But kenyataannya ini tidak berlaku. Sebelum ini, kalau kita lihat, ambil sajalah COVID ini, seperti yang mana kita katakan, ada orang mendahului yang lain. Yang ni dah dapat vaksin, dapat macam-macam. Yang lain misalnya masih menunggu. Right? So there is, bagi saya, a kind of a disparity. And disparity ini datangnya daripada mana? Datang pendidikan lah. Pendidikan yang mengolah semua ini. Dan ini sekarang ni kita nak tukar dalam konteks yang apa dipanggil kemanusiaan, humanity. We want to work across the board, tak kira siapa. Dan ini dia katakan education, yang dikatakan education with soul. Kita bekerja dengan semua orang. Tak kira universiti apa, tak kira nombor 1 ke, ranking itu ke, ranking ini. That's not important. What is important, selagi dia manusia, selagi dia bernyawa, selagi dia ada hak, kita mesti bekerja sama. Supaya masing-masing mendapat keuntungan yang sama, bukan satu melebihi yang lain. That will be the kind of education that we want to bring into bear as far as moving forward is concerned. And when it comes to the COVID, macam mana pula this goal 17 ini boleh membantu kita untuk menangani soal COVID. Kalau semua ini dapat kita tangani, lebih mudah kita menentukan bahawa impak negatif ni tidak berlaku oleh kerana that 17 goal yang kita katakan penting. Misalnya lah, kalau ini dapat kita olah dan kita menentukan bahawa orang tidak ada yang miskin lagi, tidak ada yang ketinggalan, no one left behind. Mereka mempunyai prasarana yang baik. Semua ini akan menentukan bahawa secara tidak langsung COVID ataupun cabaran-cabaran penyakit macam ini boleh kita hilangkan. 17 goals to transform our world. That will be the impact that we see at the end of the day. So we talk about progressive leadership in this particular context, and the progressive leadership talks about a lot of values. You talk about empathy, tadi there's another one, compassionate. Compassionate ni empathy tapi dia lebih meluas. Dia lebih menyeluruh dalam konteks ini. Misalnya lah kalau kita berjalan di pasar malam, kita nampak orang mencari rezeki, minta sedekah, kita ambil duit, kita bagi saja. Kita tak menanyakan sama ada dia orang Bangladesh ke, orang India ke, orang Pakistan ke. Tak tanya berapa anaknya, tak tanya pula mengapa dia sini. Kita rasa kita nak bagi, kita bagi. Kerana kita dah sampai satu tahap bahawa kita faham apa dia yang kita perlu lakukan sebagai manusia yang mempunyai sikap-sikap kemanusiaan sedemikian. And that, I think, is part of the leadership that we talked about. But malangnya bila kita lihat soal leadership ini dalam keadaan membangunkan satu bentuk kepemimpinan, This is the structure now, and that's why your topic is very important. Yeah? Dia kata leaders are inundated by increasingly perception of incompetence, greed and frivolity. Yeah? Dia mengatakan bahawa pemimpin-pemimpin yang ada sekarang ni memang tidak terampil, tamak dan juga memikirkan benda-benda yang remeh saja. Ya. Dan ini kita boleh lihat kalau kita lihat dari segi the vaksin tadi, seperti yang saya katakan. Bila ada vaksin, then suddenly 3 nilai ni keluar. Masing-masing berebut-rebut, ya. Kerana masing-masing cuba menggunakan pendekatan-pendekatan yang mungkin tidak etika dalam hal ini, ya, kind of incompetency, dan menggunakan pembaziran dan sebagainya as part of the thing. So while kita bercakap tentang masalah yang menghadapi kemanusiaan, tetapi nilai kemanusiaan itu ataupun gerak kerja kemanusiaan itu ataupun niat kemanusiaan itu masih yang lama. Ya, masih yang lama. Mana datangnya? Semula balik pada pendidikan. Pasal dalam pendidikan kita tidak diajar nilai-nilai ini. Kalau seorang itu dia jurutera, dia ajar macam mana nak membangunkan jambatan, tapi di mana nak bangunkan jambatan, untuk keuntungan siapa, sama ada dia menjaga prosperity yang kita katakan tadi itu tidak banyak dipersoalkan. Sebab itu dalam pendidikan kita ini, kita ada sekarang ni 6 aspirasi. Dan 6 aspirasi ini seperti yang dikatakan tu, knowledge, thinking skill, leadership, bilingual skill, semua orang tahu. Tapi 2 ni yang banyak kita tak cakap lah. Yang ini semua kita cakap pasal semua ni ada periksa. Ini ada penilaiannya. Sini jarang menilai. Etika dan kerohanian dan identiti nasional ini. Right? Dan ini yang dikatakan penting untuk menjadikan manusia itu manusia. Yang lain ni dia boleh jadi, tapi dia boleh jadi robot juga. Tapi dalam ini dia mesti jadi manusia kalau dia nak menghayati dua nilai ini. Ya. Semua ini termaktub dalam falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan. Bukan satu benda yang asing bagi kita. Saya bercakap tentang falsafah ini banyak kali. Maknanya tidak ada falsafah ini, nilai ini tidak akan wujud. Dia seolah-olah terangkum one over the other. Right? And you need to understand this falsafah kerana ia adalah bagi saya part of the heart. Ya. Hati falsafah ini adalah soal-soal etika dan kerohanian, ya, yang memberi kita satu nilai keprihatinan sebagai sebuah negara dan kesudahannya melahirkan satu bentuk kepemimpinan yang juga progresif dalam hal ini. 2 dimensi ini saya rasa penting dalam kita melahirkan apa yang dikatakan minda masyarakat dan negara yang progresif. Right? So saya nak balik very quickly. I think some of you must have heard some of the talk that I talk about. Bila kita bercakap tentang falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, adakah ini satu falsafah yang progresif? Ada orang mengatakan kepada saya ini dah konservatif, ini dah tradisional, ini dah sudah ketinggalan zaman. Jadi dia tak perlu kita ketengahkan lagi kerana dia sudah ketinggalan zaman, katanya lah. Ya? So macam mana kita nak membangunkan negara ataupun masyarakat dengan falsafah yang tidak lagi secocok pada ketika dan masanya. Ya? But let's find and understand dulu. Cuba faham dulu apa ini falsafah supaya kita tahu sama ada dia progresif ataupun tidak. Ya? Ada beberapa ciri yang perlu kita kenal pasti. Pertamanya, dia bercakap tentang 4 dimensi. Intellectual, emotional, spiritual, physical. Intellect, emosi, rohani dan jasmani. 4 ini. Dan dia kata dia mesti jadi holistic dan integrated. Ya? Bukan saja dia berpisah, tetapi dia sekali. Dia mesti wujud sekali dalam satu bentuk perimbangan. Dalam satu bentuk perimbangan, balance dan harmonis katanya. Ya? Dan juga bergantung kepada sikap ketuhanan yang kesudahannya boleh mencapaikan kesejahteraan diri, yang kesudahannya seperti mana yang dikatakan tadi, dia boleh membantu the betterment of family, society and nation. In other words, kalau kita nak sampai kemari, ini kita mesti persiapkan dulu. Kalau ini tidak ada, ini kemungkinan tidak akan berlaku. Ini persoalan yang paling penting. Saya cuba nak huraikan. The first one, dia kata to produce individual who are balanced, harmonious, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. So that is a goal, right? Dan keempat-empat ini mesti ada dalam bentuk perimbangan. Dia juga mesti berimbang. Di antara intelek dan spiritual mesti berimbang. Ini juga mesti berimbang. Ini juga mesti berimbang. Ini juga mesti berimbang. Baru dikatakan pendidikan itu progresif. Now you go back and look at our curriculum, our methodology, our pedagogy. Adakah ini berlaku? Mungkin berlaku dalam dua tiga dimensi, tapi dari keseluruhannya, dia katakan holistik tadi, adakah berlaku? Saya rasa mungkin tidak. That's the first thing. Dan bila itu berlaku, bila manusia itu harmoni, baru kita boleh mendapat masyarakat yang harmoni. Kalau manusianya tidak harmoni, ataupun dalam anggota-anggota masyarakatnya tidak harmoni, kita tidak akan dapat masyarakat yang harmoni. This is clear. Kalau orang dalam rumah tu asyik bergaduh je, rumah tu tidak akan tenteram. Begitu juga masyarakat. So kalau kita tidak mendidik diri kita sebagai manusia yang seimbang dan harmonis, macam mana masyarakat kita nak menjadi seimbang dan harmonis? Pokok pangkalnya di mana ketiga-tiga ini boleh bertemu supaya membangunkan nilai keharmonian tadi. Dan kita definisikan ini dari segi, misalnya kalau kita katakan keharmonian itu misalnya apa? Mesti ada maruah. Kalau kita tidak menghormati maruah orang lain, kemungkinan kita tidak akan dapat keharmonian. Dia mesti ada nilai-nilai keadilan. Kalau dia tidak dianggap sebagai sebahagian daripada keadilan, dia tidak akan berlaku. I think everybody experiences. Kita sendiri, kalau kita pergi ke kedai dan orang tidak memberi kita layanan seperti seorang manusia, yang kita pun naik berang dibuatnya. Kesudahannya kalau ini berlaku, baru kita boleh dapat keamanan dan juga kerjasama yang mantap dan kerjasama yang berpandangan. So ketiga-tiga ini kita boleh rangkumkan sebagai people, planet and profit, itu tiga P. Peace and partnership, lagi 2 P, dan umumnya dikatakan inilah yang kita nak cari. How do you create a progressive system that use all these 5 Ps, apart from 4 yang kita katakan dalam falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan kita. So I just want to illustrate to you dalam satu lagi bentuk yang dikeluarkan oleh UNESCO yang seakan-akan sama dengan apa yang dikatakan dalam falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan. Dia ada learning to know dan learning to do. Ni adalah dua perkara yang kalau kita cakap tentang pelajaran mesti ada ni. Bagaimana kita nak mengetahui, bagaimana kita nak melakukan sesuatu. Ini menggunakan your mind tadi tu, dan bertumpu kepada ilmu. Ini menggunakan tangan kita, kaki tangan kita yang menentukan kepada kemahiran dan juga tindakan itu. I think this makes sense. Dan kalau kita gabungkan kedua ini, baru kita dapat IQ, PQ, ada juga mungkin EQ dalam konteks ini. And this is where I think the learning dimension becomes important. Tapi ada satu lagi learning important yang dikatakan learning to be ni. Learning to be ni berbalik-balik kepada hati kita. Dan hati kita memberi satu tahap kesedaran dan satu tahap kefahaman yang dikatakan EQ dengan SQ. So kalau tiga-tiga ini digabungkan, kita akan mendapat apa dikatakan learning to live together. Learning to live together ni saya rasa penting sekarang ini kerana dalam konteks pandemik ini, masalahnya masalah learning to live together. Bukan masalah learning to live alone. How to live together. Ini dia membawa kepada soal-soal sikap, soal-soal nilai. Apakah nilai yang kita katakan compassion, empathy, sympathy? Apakah nilai-nilai yang penting yang boleh kita hidup bersama? Dan hidup bersama itu secara sejahtera. Ataupun yang kita katakan the complete person holistic, integrated, ya. And finally kita menggunakan istilah insan sejahtera, bukan modal insan. Pada dalam insan sejahtera itu ada nilai-nilai kesejahteraan yang boleh membuat transformasi, ya, menjadikan semua manusia itu terbentuk, bukan sebahagiannya saja seperti mana yang kita lihat dalam kita bercakap tentang modal insan. So that is a big picture of a progressive education. Is learning to be, or the pillars of learning that it talks about. So I want to finish up dengan soal ini saja. Kalau kita lihat falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan ini, penulisannya begitu. Dia kata satu usaha berterusan, lebih memperkembangkan potensi diri secara menyeluruh dan bersepadu, melahirkan insan seimbang dan harmonis dari segi intelek, rohani, emosi, jasmani berdasarkan kepada kebutuhan ini sebagai peringkat individunya. Everybody boleh buat ni. Ya, dia tak pergi sekolah pun dia boleh buat. Kerana ini ada fitrah bagi kita untuk kita membangunkannya. Mungkin lebih baik kalau di sekolah, kalau kita nak belajar tentang bagaimana cara-cara yang lain, ya. Bila itu dah lengkap, baru kita melihat bagaimana ini boleh diterjemahkan kepada masyarakat. Alright. So usaha ini adalah bertujuan untuk apa? Melahirkan warga negara Malaysia. Maksudnya kita mula membangunkan satu masyarakat, ya, yang berilmu, berketerampilan, berakhlak mulia, bertanggungjawab, keupayaan mencapai apa? Mencapai kesejahteraan diri. Kesudahannya dalam masyarakat itu kita merasa kita sejahtera, dan atas kesejahteraan itu kita baru boleh menyumbang kepada keharmonian keluarga, masyarakat dan negara. I think it's a fantastic falsafah pendidikan kalau kita faham. Ya? Kalau kita tak faham lain cerita. Tapi apa yang penting, ada kata-kata kunci yang saya rasa penting kalau kita bercakapkan the progressive higher education. Apakah kata kuncinya? Pertama, tentang kesejahteraan diri. Ya? Apa yang dimaksudkan dengan sejahtera? Ini satu persoalan yang saya cuba nak buat dah 20 tahun, mencari apa dia. Macam mana kita operationalize, macam mana saya tahu Wan Marzuki ni sejahtera orangnya. Ya? Macam mana saya nak tahu pelajar-pelajar saya sejahtera orangnya. Because that's the final outcome of education. The progressive education tadi. Dan kita berbalik-balik kepada kata kuncinya lah. Pertamanya dia mesti seimbang. Ya? Keduanya dia mesti harmonis. Sudah tertera di situ. Ya? Apa yang seimbang? Jasmaninya, inteleknya ataupun akalnya, emosinya dan rohaninya. Lagi sekali tertera di situ. Ya. Jadi bukan harmonis serbarangan. 4 perkara ini mesti harmonis katanya. Atas asas apa? Atas taat kepada Tuhan ataupun kepercayaan kepada Tuhan. Bila itu berlaku, apa yang berlaku? Akhlaknya juga mulia, etikanya juga mulia. Ya. Akhlak mulia ni maknanya akhlak dengan etika ni. Ini kata kunci yang datang daripada sini. Right? Dan kesemuanya ini, bila kata kita sejahtera, inilah dia. Ya. So sejahtera ni sekarang ada makna. Dia kata sejahtera apa? Salam sejahtera. Baru kita tahu, oh apa yang aku salamkan ni. Ya. Malaysia sejahtera. Baru kita tahu apa dia, seimbang dan sebagainya. Ya. Kedah sejahtera. Tanya Menteri Besar Kedah ni, Kedah sejahtera ni apa ni? Dia faham tak faham? Saya tak faham kot. Ya. Baru kita ada makna. Jadi kita sebagai pendidik, baru kita tahu apa yang kita nak mensejahterakan. Ini dia. Ruang ataupun lingkup kerja kita, ini dia. Kerana apa? Kerana dia kata sejahtera diri itu baru boleh menyumbang kepada keharmonian. Jadi kita mengatakan saya insan sejahtera. Saya sudah merasai sejahtera. Saya tahu bagaimana untuk memberi kesejahteraan kepada orang lain. Ya. Ini macam orang yang sejahtera dirinya baru boleh memberi kesejahteraan pada orang. Orang tak sejahtera dirinya, kalau kerjanya tu asyik nak marah orang je, dia tak pandai mensejahterakan orang lain. Nah, ini soal bully ni. Orang tanya saya pasal apa bully? Pasal kerja dia membuli je. Dia tak tahu macam mana nak mensejahterakan dirinya, jadi macam mana dia nak tidak membuli orang lain. Ya? Bos kita begitu juga. Nak marah je pasal apa? Pasal dia tahu marah je. Dia tak tahu macam mana nak mensejahterakan dirinya. Ini soalnya. Bila sejahtera itu baru dikata kita boleh menyumbang kepada keluarga, masyarakat, keluarga, masyarakat dan negara. Dan kita rumpun balik the head, the hand and the heart. That is the final. The buku yang kita tulis berkenaan ini, dan inilah apa yang dikatakan the progressive education system that leads to the progressive mind, that leads to the progressive society, and finally the progressive nation. It starts with a progressive university, of course, with a progressive lecturer, with a progressive vice chancellor, with a progressive staff, and hopefully with a progressive minister. Minister tak progressive, universitinya juga tak boleh progressive lah dalam konteks ini. So we talk about this thing in this particular context. The hand maknanya is about contributing, creating, leading. The head is about knowing, thinking. So we solve the problem of where are we going, where are we now, and the heart gives you the value, the love, the appreciation, the sense of belonging. Dan semua ini dirangkumkan dalam satu model yang kesudahannya boleh kita lihat sebagai apa yang kita katakan dalam falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan. Mengapa kan? To achieve kesejahteraan diri, to contribute. What is so important of kesejahteraan diri? You will be able to contribute. If you don't, diri tidak sejahtera, kita tidak akan boleh menyumbang untuk membawa harmoni dan betterment of society. So that is it. The four elements yang dikatakan kesejahteraan diri itu, daripada istilah sejahtera yang membawa, kalau dalam konteks yang kita kata lagi, the 3 P itu, people, planet and prosperity, peace and what you call and partnership, is in a total conformation yang dikatakan sejahtera. So the word sejahtera tu ada makna, dia bukan sebarangan, bukan ikut seronok kita aja. Asasnya adalah asas falsafah pendidikan. Malah kalau saya give you, I don't know, some of you may be from different department, carilah dokumen-dokumen ekonomi ke, ekonomi politik ke, yang ada perkataan sejahtera. Sampai sekarang dah 20 tahun saya mencari, tidak ada. Hanya dalam falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan saja yang ada istilah sejahtera itu. Jadi maknanya asasnya mesti datang daripada pendidikan. Baru daripada pendidikan tu dia jadi kesejahteraan ekonomi ke, kesejahteraan politik ke, bendanya lah. Tapi datangnya asasnya, sumber ilhamnya mesti daripada falsafah pendidikan. Dan seperti yang mengatakan tadi, kesudahannya berkaitan dengan akhlak kita, berkaitan dengan cara kita bekerja, berkaitan dengan bagaimana kita menterjemahkan ilmu yang ada untuk kejadian semua. I will because time is short, let me just take you to some other okay. Let me start with this one. Share slide. Dah tak reti pula dah. Ernie!
Boleh Tan Sri? Boleh?
Boleh ya?
Tak apa. Tak nampak lagi.
How to load the slide where I shared the screen ni?
Where did you put the slide just now?
Ya kah? Nampak kan ni? Nampak dah kah?
Belum lagi Tan Sri.
Okey, nak?
Belum. Sekejap.
Belum.
Cuba sekali macam mana.
Nanti ada let my technician.
Tan Sri kat bawah tu ada warna hijau share screen tu kan? Okey.
Nak tekan ada share ni kot.
Klik share screen.
Share.
Ya.
Keluar.
Okay. And then buat slideshow.
Jadi.
Okay, dah jadi. Dah okey dah. Okey. Okey.
So ini balik pada bila kita cakap tentang falsafah pendidikan itu, kita nak ini semua ni menjurus kepada ini semua. Where do you get this? The ultimate yang kita nak tu. So I just want to end up by, so how do you define the human mind itu yang kita katakan progressive tu? I want to start off with this model. Ini lepas 20 tahun cuba nak faham ini dia. Kita katakan kita mula dengan konsep kita ni is a spiritual being. We are not a physical being. Physical being ni secara kebetulan saja kita ada rupa bentuk, ya. Tapi yang kita nak didik adalah the spirituality, the emotion yang sekarang ini nampak terlompang apabila datang pandemik. Ya, pandemik datang, ini yang dua benda yang tidak ada langsung coping mechanism, resiliency dan soal-soal etikanya. Ya. So saya mula dengan ini, kita nak menyedarkan diri kita we are the spiritual being. And that I think is important realization, not like what we are used to understand the physical being. Pakai baju cantik-cantik tapi dalam berkeladak. No. Biarlah pakai baju sederhana tapi dalam bersih. Ini kerja pendidikan. Pendidikan untuk membersihkan yang di dalam, bukan untuk menunjuk-nunjuk saja. Ya. So duit banyak, perangai macam kita tak payah cakap. Ya. Ini yang kita nak didik sekarang ni. So bila itu dah terdidik, baru kita mula menggunakan intellectual capacity kita, kognitif kita ataupun the psychological kita. Dan ini yang saya katakan microcosm. Dunia dalam diri kita. Dunia dalam diri kita. Dan dunia dalam diri kita ni mesti diperbetulkan dulu. Supaya kita dapati bahawa satu sinergi timbul daripada minda dengan hati. Ya. So although you talk about the mind, the word mind tu sebenarnya dia merangkumi dua. Dalam perkataan Melayunya, perkataan bukan minda, dalam perkataan Melayunya adalah budi. Minda lagi sekali macam Lestari lah. Ada mind, kita minda, tambah je A. Tapi tak ada makna. Bagi kita orang minda tak ada makna. Perkataan minda, kalau nak mind dalam Melayunya adalah perkataan budi. We will go into that maybe later. Ya. Dan kedua-dua ini dia berinteraksi. Ini yang salah dalam pendidikan kita. Kita hanya mendidik minda, tapi hubungannya dengan hati tidak ada. Jadi bila dihantar signal kepada hati, hati tak tahu nak interact. Hati tak tahu macam mana nak bagi feedback. The imbangan itu tidak ada. Yeah? And this is what happened dalam konteks dalam konteks COVID-19. Dia terkurung dalam bilik. Ya, dia berfikir segala benda tetapi dia tidak dapat feedback daripada emosinya. Emosinya seolah-olah macam tak ada peranan langsung. Kesudahannya dia kecewa, dia bunuh diri dan sebagainya. Begitu juga dengan rohaninya. This is I think the lesson that we learn, or at least I learn dalam COVID ini. Dan ini kesudahannya ada balance-nya sendiri. Ya, macam mana kita nak balance between hati dengan minda. Kadang-kadang hati kita terdetik, minda kita akan berkata sedemikian. How do you balance this? That is the lesson that we need to know dalam konteks yang ada sekarang ini. Bukan saja minda, tetapi hatinya juga penting. Ya. Bila ini sudah berlaku dan kita dah tahu macam mana nak balance diri kita sendiri, ya, dan baru kita bersedia untuk menjalankan tugas kita sebagai insan dalam masyarakat kita, baik dari segi ekologinya, ekonominya, budayanya dan juga masyarakatnya, the society that you talk about. And that is the microcosm, the dunia luar. Kita sekarang ini bila masuk, kita hanya belajar tentang dunia luar je. Macam mana kita nak mentadbir ekologi, ekonomi, budaya sebagainya. Diri kita tidak tahu macam mana nak mentadbirnya, mengurusnya. Ya. Ini juga ada balance sendiri. Dia katakan the macro balance ni. Ya. Dan kalau saya letakkan spices ni, you nak tahu apa spices ni, inilah dia. S spirituality, P ni psychological ni, mana dia? I intellectual, C cognitive, E ecology, economy, S societal, C ni juga cultural. Nak mengingatkanlah 10 benda ni macam mana kita nak imbangi. Micro balance dengan the micro balance. Kesudahannya, pendidikan yang berjaya adalah pendidikan yang boleh menyempurnakan dua ni. The micro, apa yang berlaku di luar dengan apa yang berlaku di dalam, dia seimbang. Ya? Ini yang dikatakan the principle, the sejahtera practice of balance. Dia sejahtera di luar, dan dia sejahtera di dalam, sehingga kan kita dapat memahami sejahtera itu sebagai salah satu daripada pendidikan yang boleh menjadikan manusia itu manusia. Ya, yang menjadi manusia itu dia serentak boleh berbakti kepada masyarakat dan juga dirinya sendiri. Right? And that I think is what the lesson is all about. Yeah, I'm going to finish with just another one. Basically, it gives you a same demonstration. Kita katakan pendidikan itu berterusan. Yeah? Level pertama dia berterusan. Kerana ini dia tidak akan berhenti. Selagi kita tak mati, dia akan terus. Detik ataupun denyut jantung itu akan terus. Ya? Dan ongoing, itu berterusan. Ya? Keduanya kita katakan bahawa dianya menyeluruh. Ya? Maknanya dia mengambil bukan saja the spiritual dimension, dia juga mengambil the external dimension, the 5 deria yang kita ada. Ya? Dan kelima-lima deria ini dia tidak bertindak sendiri, dia bertindak dengan jantung tu yang dikatakan dengan holistik itu. Ya? Dan ini yang dimaksudkan dalam falsafah pendidikan. Macam mana kita gabungkan kedua-dua ini seperti yang kita katakan tadi supaya dia masih boleh menjalankan aktivitinya secara seimbang. Right? Dan bila ini dah berlaku, ya, antara keduanya baru kita sekarang ni boleh bergerak. Macam orang main bola dah pandai main bola, mau masuk padang. Yang hijau ni padang. Ya, di mana kita mula integrate the whole dimension. And that dimension itu where the microcosm is. Dan microcosm ini seperti yang kita katakan tadi, dia merangkumi ekologi, ekonomi dan sebagainya. Dan bukan itu saja, masing-masing dalam keadaan seimbang yang berlaku. It's microcosm and so on and so forth. So that will be, I think, the kind of balance that we talk about, the microcosm and the macrocosm in a kind of a balance that works together. And that is a balance of being. Kehidupan kita adalah berkenaan dengan ini. Dan ini sebenarnya bagi saya lah apa yang pendidikan progresif perlu beri pada kita. Bukan sekadar dapat kerja saja. Dapat kerja penting, tapi orang yang dah balance memang dapat kerja. Tak ada orang yang tak balance, yang balance tak dapat kerja. Malah satu bonus pada majikan. Bila dibandingkan orang yang hanya bekerja kerana bekerja, tapi kemanusiaannya ataupun the being itu tidak diambil kira dalam hal ini. So I will stop there. So we have got the macro balance, yeah, which is in self balance, and more importantly is a balance that is reflected within you, and that is the mind and the heart. Right. So I will stop there. Walaupun there are a few more slides, but I think the general picture is there. So if I were to conclude, I say basically, if you want to have this progressive mind and society and the nation, you must create a progressive education system dulu. Kalau sistemnya tidak progresif ataupun kolot ataupun very autocratic macam apa yang kadang-kadang kita lihat, dan mustahil lah bagi saya. Ya, mustahil kita boleh memupuk satu pemikiran ataupun satu masyarakat yang progresif dalam konteks ini. Dan semua ini adalah perkara yang boleh kita lakukan dari segi falsafahnya, dari segi sustainable developmentnya, dari segi akidahnya. Semua ini boleh kita lakukan. Hanya kita nak meletakkan dan mencantumkannya supaya ianya menjadi betul-betul satu sistem yang progresif. Yeah. So Dr. Wan, saya berhenti situ 4.30. Kalau ada setengah jam.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, kita ada setengah jam untuk buka kepada soalan, insyaAllah. Terima kasih yang berbahagia Profesor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Zul, Datuk Dzulkifli Abdul Razak atas perkongsian yang begitu bermakna dan juga banyak konsep-konsep baru yang perlu kita sama-sama kita sama-sama digestkan dia supaya kita dapat laksanakan konsep of the progressive education of progressive university ni ya. Okey, kepada rakan-rakan yang ada soalan boleh letak dekat chat boleh on mic dan boleh tanya insya-Allah. Okey, Tan Sri, ada satu soalan dekat chat ni.
Sila.
Okay, saya bacakan soalan ataupun kalau Dr. Fadlina nak baca pun boleh. Okay, saya bacakan. Dia kata soalan ni, can you please guide us how to be able to have an objective indicators for kesejahteraan? Okay.
There are many ways of doing it. I think
Okay.
the most important, macam saya katakan tadi, you are your own indicator. Maknanya macam saya lah memberi ceramah begini, ya. I should be able to demonstrate to you that I am orang yang sejahtera. And how do I do that? Is from the kind of presentation that I do. You know, the quality of presentation that I do, the kind of work that I put in, you will probably see whether that person is already there ataupun tidak. You are your own indicator. I think the whole idea yang kita mengatakan bahawa ni indikator ni mesti bertulis, kita dengan apa ni, dengan ketua jabatan kita, ini 10, ini 11, it's a very arbitrary thing. At the end of the day, bila saya jadi naib chancellor, nak judge whether Wan Marzuki hari ni moderator yang bagus ataupun tidak, saya kena berbalik-balik tengok apa yang dia buat. How he present himself. You are your own editor. You want to talk about the KPI, my concept is I am the KPI. If I were to make a presentation, I want to make sure I got 10 over 10, and therefore my work to you will tell you that I have tried my best. Whether you want to give me 10, 9, 8, itu your decision, but I will tell you I've done my best. This is my masterpiece. You know? That is one way of telling. I mean, the onus is you. The onus is not somebody else. So what you do is what you get at the end of the day. But there is another scientific objective way of doing this, which I have no time to go into. There is now a kind of a machine that tells you whether your mind and your heart is working together. It's a whole concept of what we call the heart rate variability. Dia macam apa? Macam ECG juga. Yeah? Kalau your head and your mind and your heart does not work together, you find your ECG is very erratic. It's not ECG, it's not called ECG, it is called HRV, heart rate variability. Kalau your mind and your heart works together, then your HRV becomes very, very smooth. And you can control that. You can control it. Maknanya, this why saya katakan tadi, kalau kita boleh mengawal dunia dalam diri kita, kita boleh mengawal dunia di luar.
Okay. This is maksudnya Tan Sri is about our own ability. Sama ada kita boleh control or not. That's right. Okay, so yang tu kena belajar lagi lah kan, how you want to control yourself, how you want to control your world.
Exactly. Right. This is what education should be bagi saya. This is what education should be. Maknanya kita diajar macam mana kita mengawal diri kita sendiri. I go to Bhutan. Bhutan you tahu kan, dia tak bercakap tentang GDP, dia cakap tentang GNH, Gross National Happiness. Ya. Dan cara dia mendidik budak-budak sekolah dia, di tiap minggu 45 minit dia mengajar pelajar-pelajar kita how to be happy. And bukan saja di sekolah, di semua pejabat dia belajar how to be happy. How many of us have been told how to be happy? How to be sad ada lagaknya. Yeah. Whereas the purpose of education is to make you a better person, then you become sort of happy, and your happiness will help others to be happy. That is a purpose of education. Tapi oleh kerana education kita ni sudah di-hijack oleh teori yang dikatakan the theory of modal insan. Modal insan has nothing to do with happiness. Modal insan is about how much you collect at the end of the day. Macam now, you want me to give a talk. I will ask Dr. Wan, berapa nak bayar saya ni? Itu dia punya pembukanya. Kalau dia kata kementerian bagi 300 sejam Tan Sri. Kalau 300 saya tak main lah.
Betul lah kan. Itu
kata,
salah satu contoh Tan Sri kan. Menarik tu.
So saya kata lah, hari tu 28 bulan saya busy lah. Cari orang lain lah. This what we are. That's why kita kerja-kerja ni merebut KPI je. KPI is that money. We don't talk about money now, but it's that form of reward. But if I go, masa saya masuk kerja dulu, ini tak masuk kerja. Saya balik tahun 80, buat kerja di USM. Kerja saya tiap-tiap minggu membuat tuition class untuk budak-budak kampung di Pulau Pinang. Ya, tak ada KPI, tak ada seorang suruh, tak masuk pun dalam CV saya. Pasal apa? Bila saya buat itu, I have this personal satisfaction that I've done something for the community, that I have something to give. Ya. Tapi Tuhan tu agaknya maha kaya, kalau kita memberi kepada orang, agaknya ada jugalah reward yang dia bagi pada kita. Itu terpulang kepada kepercayaan kita dan keyakinan kita. Tapi kalau kita kerja bertungkus lumus dan niat kita tak betul, nak cari duit banyak je, duit mungkin banyak tapi hidup kita tak bahagia. That is a concept that I think we need to think and rethink balik. Where are we heading? This is a very new liberal way of looking at things. That bila kita bagi satu, kita bisa dapat 10. In a physical sense, I think that's not work. To me lah, by my standards, I think it does not work. If I want to give, I give betul-betul. Kita niat kita sedekah. InsyaAllah, kalau niat kita betul, kita akan dapat habuannya yang lebih daripada itu. Lebih daripada apa. So, this is, I think, what education is all about. And I think we have missed this point. Bila kita bercakap tentang KPI. Memang adalah KPI peranannya. Tapi tidak semuanya kerana KPI. Atau tidak semuanya kerana kita nak mendapat keuntungan yang lebih daripada apa yang orang boleh dapat. Yeah? There's a comment here from Nur Fazila. Not even many people remind us to appreciate ourselves. Exactly. I work in this office. Ya. Saya tiap-tiap hari jumpa mungkin 30-40 orang. Tapi saya menanyakan diri saya, when did I talk to myself? Yeah, I know everybody's problem in my office. Ni masalah. Tapi masalah saya pun saya tak tahu. Because I have no time to talk to myself. And this is where dalam Islamnya, bagi saya, the tahajud prayer is the best. Bangun malam, bayang tahajud, you talk to God, you talk to yourself. Nobody disturbs you. Nobody even know that you do tahajud gitu. These are the things yang kita katakan the heart-mind balance to becomes into play. You know, but these are not taught to us because it's not important to people who actually runs our life, and we need to find this a way of part of education. And that education balik kepada falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan yang mengatakan kepada ketaatan dan kepatuhan kepada Tuhan. That I think is the underlying thing. And dia gunakan perkataan Tuhan. Dia tak menggunakan nama-nama Tuhan yang tertentu yang mengatakan ini orang Islam je, orang bukan Islam tidak penting. As everybody is important in this particular context.
Allahu Akbar.
Ya, sila Dr. Suliana. Ya.
Mungkinlah yang bahagian UPM ni buat. Sebab yang kat situ mana-mana, tapi mungkin.
Okey, kalau ada soalan boleh terus bertanya. Okey, sila Dr. Haizil. Silakan.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Apa khabar? Sihat?
Alhamdulillah. Itulah.
Tan Sri, saya melihat daripada konteks sebagai seorang bapa, saya melihat daripada segi pembentukan ataupun amalan progressivism ini perlu dilaksanakan dalam konteks pendidikan di rumah. Sebab kalau kita, if we don't start anywhere, the progressivism approach ni, we might left behind lah. Bila dah sampai ke peringkat universiti, saya fikir agak terlewat. Tapi saya nampak peranan sebagai ibu bapa itu penting untuk mewujudkan semangat progressivism itu perlu berlaku di rumah. So, apa pandangan Tan Sri berkaitan perkara tersebut?
Definisi pendidikan tadi jelas. Dia kata is ongoing. Maknanya dia bukan bertempat. Ini modernism, dia katakan bahawa belajar di sekolah je. Kalau kita ambil sebelum saya masuk sekolah dulu, saya belajar di mana saja. Wherever you go is already everywhere, anytime. Yang kita kata sekarang ni lah, anytime, anywhere. This is where education is all about. You go to the shopping mall, you educate yourself. You go to the dapur, you educate yourself. There's a learning experience everywhere. Learning bagi saya is an experience. It's not sitting in a classroom listening to one old man depan bercakap, kita ambil nota, itu belajar jugalah. Tapi saya panjat pokok is a learning experience. You know, all these things, you are right in the sense that siapa yang jadi masa saya kecil, dia ada satu perkataan mengata, it takes a whole village to educate a child. Bila saya keluar daripada ini, anak Cikgu Razak ya. Kita dah tahu dah, ini mesti kalau tak betul dia tegur. Dia tegur there and then. You know? So education in this particular context is everywhere. We are the one that compartmentalize education, and it has to be the same. Kita tak mau di education di rumah kata gosok gigi begini, ke sekolah kata gosok gigi begini. Itu dah, how do you get this coordinated, and this is where values comes in. Kerana value itu dia setara, dia tidak akan lari. And di mana kita letakkan values ini dalam pendidikan? Values yang, sebab itu juga values yang saya katakan tadi ada konteks. Dalam konteks kita, macam mana kita menilai sesuatu, jangan kita ambil konteks di barat. Sebab tu saya paling tak suka ranking ni pasal apa? Pasal konteksnya orang lain punya, bukan kita punya. Dan kita cuba pula nak masuk dalam konteks dia. Dan kita meninggalkan apa yang ada pada kita, yang memang apa tu sudah terbukti berjaya bagi kita, tapi kita tinggalkan kerana apa? Dia tidak world class konon. Ya. Orang tanya saya, are you world class? Dia kata, saya tanya balik, whose world are you talking about? In my world, you may not be world class. I don't mind, I'm not in world class in your world. Doesn't matter. My world and your world are two different things. We need to understand this very well. And this is where I think education, people like us, yeah, people like us must voice ourselves. Saya mungkin dah umur dah tua ni, tapi I need people like you to tell when it is wrong. And kerja kita pendidik, kita bukan mendidik pelajar-pelajar aja. Kita mendidik naib chancellor, kita didik juga. Menteri kita didik juga. Perdana Menteri kita didik juga. Itu kerja kita. Tapi sudah tentulah Perdana Menteri mendidik menteri lain caranya, bukan kita. Our role is to put things right. Once you get things right, then I think we can get things. That's why seminar macam ni is very important. Tapi seminar macam ni didengari oleh orang yang dah tahu. Orang yang tak tahu tak mau dengarnya. So we are teaching the convert. We need to get this out of the system. I am very passionate about this because kita nak akan ada pilihan raya. Harap-harap menteri yang akan naik yang boleh kita bawa ke tengah lah dalam hal ini. So I betul Kaiser, you start with a family, but that's why family ibu bapa kesatuan ibu bapa guru ni. Guru dengan ibu bapa dia mesti akrab.
YBhg datang Sri.
YBhg. Dia mesti akrab. Ya. Dia tahu apa yang diajar di sekolah dan apa yang diajar di rumah, dan dia dicantumkan dalam hal ni. Dia bukan separuh guru, separuh ibu bapa, dia hantar anak kat sekolah aja. Sekolah lah buat. Salah semua salah sekolah. Kalau di rumah dia tak ada. Malah di rumah kadang-kadang akhlak yang ditunjuk oleh ibu bapanya tak betul. These are the important things, and I honestly, kalau cakap ni saya banyak bercelote lah. Bila saya tengok drama-drama Melayu ni, nilai yang dibawa dan drama Melayu ni saya rasa cukup tak kena dengan kita. Yang bapa pukul mak, yang anak herdik bapa, yang benda ni tak berlaku dalam masyarakat kita yang berbudi, dia katakan budi bahasa, budi pekerti dan budi bicara ni. Tak ada. Dalam drama Melayu ni langsung tak ada. Saya bila tengok drama Melayu saya padam je. Pasal tak ada benda yang kita boleh belajar daripadanya. Ini kerja kita. Ya, ini dia katakan progressive mind tu, that's what it is. InsyaAllah.
Okay. Terima kasih Tan Sri. Maksudnya Tan Sri, kita juga kena responsible lah untuk mendidik beyond daripada universities ya. It's a go for the society, sampai kalau boleh yang kita yang berada dalam media perdana, media ni juga kita harus melihat kepada values yang kita nak bawa supaya nanti di dalam filem-filem dan juga drama sebagainya akan memberi impact kepada konsep yang kita nak bawa kepada masyarakat kan Surya?
Betul. Sebab tu saya nak terima masa saya jadi pelajar, student, saya dipanggil penuntut. Saya bukan dipanggil pelajar. Dan kerja saya adalah menuntut ilmu, dan ilmu itu saya tuntut bukan saja ilmu yang dibawa oleh guru, perwatakannya, peradabannya juga saya tuntut. Sebab itu bila guru saya meninggal, saya masih menghormati dia walaupun dia dah tak ada. Kita baca doa untuk dia, pasal kita banyak dapat pada dia. Sekarang ni kita tak panggil dia penuntut dah. Kita tak ada, jadi guru, supaya guru pada tu dia menjaga perwatakan dia, pasal itu juga dituntut oleh pelajarnya. Dia tengok macam mana cikgunya bergerak, macam mana cikgunya membuat keputusan, macam mana cikgunya menegur. Semua ni sebahagian daripada pembelajaran yang kita dapat. Tapi guru sekarang bukan itu lagi dah. Guru sekarang cikgu, kita boleh tumbuk cikgu. Lebih pukul 5 dia bukan guru dah, boleh tumbuk. That does not happen in peradaban ilmu yang ada. Yeah? So I think the shift is something that I think is very, very important for us to recognize and how to bring it back.
Maksudnya apa yang kita hasratkan dari segi character building ataupun pembinaan watak dan karakter itu mungkin ada dia punya cabaran-cabaran tertentu yang menyebabkan mungkin half ataupun segelintir daripada masyarakat tidak dapat dibina karakternya dengan sistem pendidikan kita yang ada. So mungkin apakah perkara-perkara yang mungkin yang menjadi cabaran Tan Sri kalau dari perspektif Tan Sri dari segi sistem kita for the time being lah.
Saya di UI ni kita sekarang ni cuba membawa nilai balik. There'll be another discussion. Kita dah ada what we call our own mungkin tak tahu yang nampak ni. Ini kita
saya terima buku tu Tan Sri. Terima kasih banyak. Dihantar kepada saya ada satu kopi.
Sejahtera Academic Framework ni
ya,
kita
betul. Saya ada satu salinan.
Apa yang wajar kita buat dalam post pandemic ini. Apa kelompangan yang perlu kita masukkan, dan sudah tentu nilai. Nilai ialah paling penting sekali. Ya. Nilai yang macam mana. So kita balik kepada nilai yang kita katakan maqasid syariah ni. Ya, apa saja nilai yang memupuk minda, menjaga nyawa, menjaga kezuriat, ini semua penting bagi kita jaga. Kita tak payah bergaduh lah. Kalau ini nilai daripada orang India, kalau dia membentuk benda ni kita ambil. Kita tak payah nak gaduh. Atau tak payah nak ada 14 nilai, 16 nilai. It does not happen that way. So how do you bring this back and put it in the education system so that it becomes part and parcel of that teaching process?
Okay. So nanti insyaAllah banyak perkara lagi boleh dikongsi juga dalam buku yang telah ditulis Sejahtera IPT Tan Sri ya.
Yeah.
Okay, so insyaAllah Datin Katie ada soalan daripada Datin Katie ya. Okay. Okay, we should not be bogged down with the ranking game. How do we get out since we have Myra and many others to satisfy our bosses? Ini persoalan daripada Datin Katie.
Yeah, I think Khatijah knows where I stand on this. How do we get? Okay, what we are trying to do. In fact, we are trying to do this with Professor Low, I think, yang apa ni, that works on what they call the new concept of university ni. Kita sekarang ni cuba nak melakarkan satu cara untuk menilai Myra ini sebagai impak. Yeah. So okay, right now we may not be able to touch Myra because the ministry wants it. Okay, never mind. But how do you translate nilai Myra kepada impact? How do you translate that? For example, I give you an example. If I got an article of impact factor of 10, the question that I would ask my colleagues is that, what impact on the ground does it give? Kalau impact factornya dari publication 10, tapi impact on the ground 0, then saya rasa 0. Maknanya kerja tu tak sempurna. Pasal kesudahannya, remember kita mengatakan kesudahannya nanti akhlak is important. Maknanya the manifestation is important. So they must be able to tell us how do you translate this knowledge that you've got into the benefit that other people would have got. That is, I think, the last mile that we need to talk about when we talk about Myra. So we are now trying to work with setara, in fact. Kita katakan, okay, let setara stays, but how do you bring the narrative of setara? So we are now preparing one report called the integrated report that we hope will do this. Bila setara ada, saya rasa setara ni sukatannya lebih accurate, lebih tepat daripada QS. Pasal dia datang daripada kita. Kita tahu apa yang berlaku. Tak payah orang lain luar nak nilai pula, nak ambil data pada kita pula, nak bagi kita nombor ini, nombor itu. I think this is just a scam. To me, it's just a scam. So recently I wrote something, I think, for example, very very clearly, kalau you take the Guardian punya guideline ataupun ranking, tahun ini the top university in the UK is St Andrews. Nombor 2 baru Cambridge, nombor 3 baru Oxford. Yeah. Tapi kalau kita ambil Times punya ranking, nombor 1 is Cambridge, nombor 2 is Oxford, St Andrew nombor 200. See, two different rankings in the same country. One is internationally biased, one is nationally biased. Get different results. Now, which one do you want to believe? Yeah. So I felt that kalau kita punya macam Guardian tu, kita punya local, kita yang jaga, dan kita akan dapat satu lagi penilaian yang cukup accurate without depending on the international rankers. And I think this is where we need to start thinking. But we need to think. Kadang-kadang universiti ni doesn't want to think, dia nak ikut je. And this is where the problem is. Asyik angguk je. We don't want to give alternative, what is it that we want to do. So it has to be that way if you want to make the change forward. And insyaAllah we are trying to do this. We are trying to look at 5 dimension. Pertamanya kita katakan the dimension yang saya panggil sebagai integrated, transdisciplinary. UPM cannot survive on just, kalau dululah agriculture you cannot survive. You need to take many other. USM cannot survive just on science. Yeah? UIA cannot survive just on religious. You need to make the whole thing into one. This transdisciplinarity. So in other words, how do you make this convergence of knowledge? So the whole idea of people working together, trying to solve a problem is important. So transdisciplinarity is one. Kita katakan, okay. The second dimension is how much of your knowledge is actually relevant to the community. So apa di contoh-contoh yang boleh. So instead of menanyakan how many patents you've got, how many innovation, commercial innovation, we ask the same thing. How do the people around you benefit from the knowledge that they've got? Kampung di UIA, Kampung Sungai Pusu. Saya mula-mula masuk kerja di UIA, saya ditanya oleh seorang mengatakan, dia kata, universiti ini di sini 35 tahun, kami dapat apa? Macam mana you nak jawab? Yeah. So one is, how do the community around you benefit from you? The third thing yang kita mengatakan bahawa when you work with the community, bila you walk out of the community, how independent is the community? We call it sebagai sustainable entrepreneurship. Kita sekarang ni masuk community, kerja kita dululah bagi saya, bakti siswa ni, cat rumah lah, potong-potong rumput lah. Sebulan dia tumbuh lah balik. Datang pula cat balik, tumbuh balik. So we are trying to take, there's no knowledge transfer. How much knowledge do you transfer so that the community can then depend on their own? By the time you walk out of the community can be independent. I think this is a problem now because kebanyakan daripada pembantuan-bantuan kerajaan semua berbentuk subsidi. Maknanya dia akan bergantung kepada kerajaan selama-lamanya. And I think that's not good. How do you make them independent? Sometimes kerajaan pun tak mau dia independent because next election dia mungkin tak menang. Ini juga ceritanya. So we want to see how do you make them independent. And the fourth thing is what we call responsible research and innovation. Responsible, the word responsible, kita use the word responsible. Responsible maknanya you must start your research beginning with the community and ending with the community. You don't dulu masa saya di USM, kita buat je projek kita, lepas tu kata ini projek kampung, and it's not applicable to them because they are not contributing to the understanding of the project. Yeah. So at the end of the day, kita tanya how responsible are you in your research, and the evaluator at the end of the day is orang kampung. Orang kampung will tell you ini sudah selesai masalah kami because we are trying to solve their problem with responsible research. And the last one is of course collaboration. How do you collaborate with people like UPM? Mungkin kita tidak ada mungkin tidak dengan Professor Low. I think the discussion was you have got a good database. I forgot what its name.
Ya, Professor Low. Yang jaga jaringan komuniti kita.
Yes. So boleh tak kami tumpang you punya database rather than nak create another one? Mengapa kita tak boleh tumpang? And you share the information, you share the knowledge together, then become a better university. Rather than you are nak buat satu pula, the UPM dah ada 20 tahun experience and we don't even recognize those experience. So that kind of a collaboration, very real collaboration, bukan collaboration just for the sake of collaborating, you know. So those are the things that we are thinking now, and to menghasilkan masalah Myra ni lah. Pasal masalah Myra ni kita ambil totally from the QS punya idea and we just repeat it. We don't put any what you call new values to it, and this is what we are trying to do at the moment in time. Myra dengan setara ni.
Okay. Ya, very yang kata apa yang perbincangan yang sangat jelas yang kita nampak dekat situ tentang pentingnya ada 5 lagi perkara yang harus kita beri penekanan untuk kita lebih sustainable ataupun progresif dan impactful. Universiti memberi impak yang besar kepada masyarakat ataupun yang kita lihat kepada rakyat lah, secara keseluruhannya. Kalau tidak, universiti dah banyak tapi mungkin impaknya tidak sebanyak yang universiti yang ada di zaman-zaman dahulu dalam 6-7 buah universiti saja. Tan Sri kan, sekarang kita ada 20.
Universiti banyak, masalah lebih banyak.
Itulah.
Betul, universiti banyak, masalah lebih kurang.
Betul lah, dulu ada 7 kan. Kalau peringkat 80-an, 90-an ada 7 ya public university. Sekarang kita sekarang dah ada banyak. So maksudnya impact dia adalah itu yang lebih kita beri penekanan dan untuk kita memastikan bahawa the benefit to go back to the community. Okay, kepada ahli-ahli yang berada, rakan-rakan yang berada di sini, mungkin kalau ada lagi soalan-soalan yang mungkin boleh ditanya.
Assalamualaikum Tan Sri.
Yes, salam.
Sila Prof.
Saya ada satu soalan. Saya sangat tertarik dengan isu yang Tan Sri bangkitkan, iaitu principle, governance, set and gender equality, culture, authority, wealth and poverty. So, let's say for example, Tan Sri kita anggapkan ini sebagai pemulih ubah bebas ke arah pemulih ubah bersandar progresif ni. Based on those pemulih ubah ni, Tan Sri, yang mana satu yang Tan Sri rasa perlu diberi keutamaan?
Yang saya pakai sebenarnya, I will give you the reference. The one that I've been using since I was in USM is what we call the good governance yang dianjurkan oleh UNESCO. Ya, dan dia ada 8 tu. The good governance, kalau Dr. Wan ada buku ni, you turn to page 152.
Okay, nanti kita ni.
Dia kata one is empowerment, accountability, transparency, responsiveness, equity and inclusive, stability, rule of law, and broad-based perceptions. I think so the problem is bila kita cakap tentang good governance ni, selalu kita ambil corporate governance. Corporate governance bagi saya tidak sesuai dengan universiti. Pasal dia kesudahannya they talk about profit and loss. We are not about profit and loss. And dalam good governance ini dia kata the university must hold the government responsible, which I think is a good thing. Selalunya the government hold us responsible. Macamnya bajet patut dibagi dan tidak dibagi. And they must be responsible for that because itu kerja dia. So these are the things that I think we need to turn around and say, look, what is it that we want to look at when we talk about the good governance. Yang tadi itu is just a random thing that I took from the internet. But the actual one, if you are interested, it is created by United Nations, UNESCO in fact. Then they recommend the 8 dimension of good governance for universities.
Okay, terima kasih.
Sama-sama. So kita kena cakap ini, kalau tidak orang selalunya lah, orang selalu, I don't know, dalam board kita ni banyak orang corporate governance. Bila kita cakap dia je yang betul, kita tak betul. Pasal dia lebih faham daripada apa yang kita faham. So if we say this is a document from UNESCO and it is what we are recommending, I think at least kurang-kurangnya kita ada basis of why we are saying so. Yeah.
Okay, it's good sharing. Nanti kita kena dapat juga ni Prof Rusli ya.
InsyaAllah.
Ni nanti kalau Prof Rusli perlu, saya boleh share juga buku yang daripada
saya nak tu kalau boleh tu. Sebab dia is a guide for us lah to develop our new curriculum actually.
Yes.
InsyaAllah. So okay, kita ada lebih kurang 3-4 minit lagi Tan Sri. Mungkin Tan Sri nak concludekan dan juga mungkin apa-apa yang nak disampaikan kepada rakan-rakan pendengar yang ada pada hari ini, peserta kita. Okay, sila Tan Sri untuk conclude.
I think yang jelas bagi saya is basically moving forward, we must make the change. Kalau kita tidak buat change, kita akan ketinggalan di belakang. And the opportunity now is everybody is looking for a new model. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm easily bored by the falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan. Pertamanya, saya dah buat satu mapping antara falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan dengan UNESCO 4 Pillars of Learning tu, dia sama. Malah dia keluar pada tahun yang sama secara independen. Kita melancarkan falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan pada tahun 1996. UNESCO launched the 4 Pillars of Learning 1996 independently, but they're almost the same. Yeah. Yang penting bagi saya adalah dianya berdasarkan kepada nilai dan acuan kita. I think that's what we want. Kesudahannya kita ada konteks kita sendiri yang kita faham dan konteks orang mungkin tidak sesuai dengan kita. Ya, itu pertama. Keduanya, dulu kita dipukaukan yang mengatakan pendidikan barat ini memang baiklah. Ya. Tapi dalam pandemik kita dapat pendidikan barat ini tidak sebaik mana yang dikatakan. Ya. The question of racism is still there. The question of discrimination is still there. The question of being colonizing is still there. Ya. Ini 3 benda yang cukup jelas bila pandemik datang. All Black Matters ni datangnya lepas itulah. Jadi mengapa kita tidak, kalau kita buat racism di Malaysia, mereka main lagi. Sibuknya. Ya, kata discriminate dan sebagainya. Tapi orang yang mengatakan kita discriminate di Malaysia ni tapi sanggup belajar di US. Dan didiscriminatekan di US, dia tak mengapa. These are the things that I think we need to come to terms with. I'm not saying that discrimination is good. But I tell, if you can tolerate a discrimination in a different country where everybody is white, why do you complain in Malaysia? You know, these are things that I think we need to start talking about. And we not to tell the ministry people. I'm very honest about it because I think we sometimes know better. Because we are on the ground, we actually see what's happening, and we can give better solution rather than orang duduk di kursi empuk ni. That is, I think, where we need to come in, and we need to come in as an academician. Kita tidak mengambil, we don't take sides. We are not a politician. We are not interested in the politics, but we are interested in solving the problem of our own people, and we are responsible for that. Otherwise, duduk universiti makan gaji, I think you are in the wrong place. I think you can makan gaji somewhere else, ada bonus lagi macam-macam. Universiti ada bonus apa? Sudahnya. Kena marah lagi ada. So you want to play that role so that kita ada maruah, kita pulangkan balik amanah yang kita pegang supaya kita dihormati dalam konteks itu. Itu saja kalau kita boleh buat dalam orang yang apa ni, yang apa tu what do you call anak-anak muda ni. I think that's where you need to put your orientation. Saya apa ni Dr. Wan, banyak orang nak buku you tu.
Betul. Itu saya kata tadi.
No, if you go to my website, IIM punya website, dia ada situ ada tulis roadmap. And if you go down to the roadmap, ada buku tu. That buku is in a flip form.
Okay, flip.
You can. There's a flip book that you can be shared. I think.
Okay.
I will try and look for it and I will send it to you. Tapi memang you go to ada tu the roadmap, and I think in the early 2018, 2019 ke, the same book you can go into a flip form. You can take that. InsyaAllah.
Okay, boleh Tan Sri, insyaAllah nanti kita
Okey,
maklumkan.
Prof, Tan Sri, dekat mana tu?
Dalam saya IUM punya website.
Dah pergi dah dekat profile staff directory tu.
Lepas tu ada tak roadmap situ? One of the subtitle tu ada roadmap.
Ada e-book store.
Nanti let me try and guide you into.
Okay, Prof Rusli, your computer science tu. Cepat.
Ada. Yeah. Ni my technician is helping me.
Okay. Masih Dato.
Sama-sama.
Tan Sri.
Tu. Di atas tu kan ada about IUM, lepas tu ada roadmap tepi tu.
Kena Tan Sri kena share dah kalau nak tunjuk.
Share the screen, boleh tak share the screen?
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Dah tu. Kat atas tu sekali. Nampak dah?
Tu ada roadmap kan?
Ada. Okay. Ada Facebook.
Okay. So
Terima kasih Tan Sri.
Dia tu ada. I'll show you sampai habis.
Okay.
Lagi.
Kita tengok semua. At least
Lagi.
semua orang boleh dapat ni.
Lagi.
Wow, ada mind map sekali Tan Sri.
Yes. Lagi. Ni.
Ni.
Ini satu. Dan satu lagi yang ini. I think I flipbook lah. I think so. Tak ada.
Ya, sejahtera akademik.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you Tan Sri.
Kalau tak ada pun Dr. Rusli, you just put Sejahtera Academic Framework, tulis flipbook, you will get it.
Okay. Dah dapat Prof. Dapat Tan Sri, dapat.
Dapat. Alhamdulillah. Okay, clear.
Okay.
Dah flip dah Tan Sri.
Okay. Jangan bergaduh.
Jangan bergaduh.
Terima kasih Tan Sri. Terima kasih.
Alhamdulillah. Tu dah ada Dato Kaiser pun dah share dekat chat. So siapa-siapa yang ingin boleh dapat terus daripada link yang Dr. Kaiser ni. Terima kasih Dr. Kaiser. So, alhamdulillah kita dah sampai ke penghujung perkongsian kita dan banyak perkara yang kita belajar tentang amanah dan juga pentingnya kita untuk mendidik masyarakat kita berasaskan nilai dan acuan kita insya-Allah untuk menjamin kesejahteraan bukan setakat sejahtera IPT saja Tan Sri, tetapi sejahtera masyarakat sejahtera rakyat okey insya-Allah. So saya rasa itu saja untuk hari ini. Sekali lagi saya bagi pihak penganjur memohon maaf jika ada kekurangan dan kesalahan dan sesilap, dan sekali lagi insya-Allah kita juga amat menghargai setiap tahun Tan Sri tidak jemu-jemu untuk bersama-sama dengan kita di dalam bulan pendidik ni. Untuk makluman Tan Sri, dia ada dekat YouTube kepada rakan-rakan yang mungkin ada kuliah dan sebagainya, mereka boleh terus melihat balik dekat YouTube di Pusat Pembangunan Akademik UPM. So sekali lagi terima kasih banyak-banyak kepada yang berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Profesor Emeritus Dzulkifli bin Abdul Razak, Rektor International Islamic Universiti Malaysia, atas perkongsian sangat bermakna dan berharga kepada kita semua. So, saya sudahi wacana bulan pendidik kita pada hari ini dengan bacaan surah Al-As dan juga tasbih kafarah.
Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih. Waalaikumsalam. Terima kasih Tan Sri, insya-Allah.
Sama-sama.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Tan Sri, terima kasih Tuan.
Sama-sama. Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih.